Welcome to e-commerce psychology. You know how it is. We take your stack of sources, pull out those juicy insights, and try to help you understand what makes online shoppers tick.
Right.
And today, we're diving into, well, I wouldn't say diving into, more like carefully examining this super interesting article you found.
Oh, yeah.
The role of autonomy and control in customer decision-making.
Yeah.
You know, it really gets into like why feeling in charge when we buy something is so important and how that whole feeling or lack of it, impacts us not just as customers, but also maybe even more so for anyone running an e-commerce store. Speaking of which, this deep dive is powered by Growth Suite. Growth Suite helps you to run smart discount campaigns on your store. Test it for free in your Shopify store. Just land on the Shopify App Store now and test it for free.
Love that.
So we've got our expert here, as always, ready to break it all down. Autonomy and control in online shopping. It's a big one.
It is.
And you mentioned before how you always felt more satisfied after a purchase when you felt like you were the one calling the shots.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And this article really delves into why that is.
Yeah.
So our mission today, if you will, is to kind of figure out how businesses can support this feeling of, I guess, independence, freedom, control, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And why it matters so much for building those strong customer relationships. I mean, we all want those loyal customers, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. What I find really fascinating here is how fundamental this need for autonomy really is. You know, the article talks about self-determination theory.
Right.
This idea that as humans, we have this like basic need to feel like we're making our own choices.
Yeah.
Not just like, the big life choices, but even in like everyday stuff, like what we buy online. Do I get the blue shirt or the red shirt? It's interesting how that plays out.
It does. It does. And I think like sometimes we don't even realize it,
Mm-hmm.
We feel it, but we don't really think about why. So the article, it kind of starts off, laying the groundwork. And they define autonomy, at least in the context of like being a consumer, as having that freedom to make choices based on your own preferences.
Right.
Without feeling like someone's breathing down your neck,
Yeah.
And then there's control, which they describe as how much influence you actually feel like you have over like the whole selection process.
Okay.
And they link this back to like self-determination theory.
Mm-hmm.
So as a consumer yourself, I'm curious, why do you think this distinction between simply having options available, which is like pure autonomy, I guess, and actually feeling like you're in control of choosing from those options?
Yeah.
Why is that so important? What's the difference there?
That's a really good question. And, you could walk into, I guess, virtually walk into a massive online store, millions of products theoretically.
Right, sure.
You have all the autonomy in the world, right?
Right.
But think about like actually navigating that.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You're bombarded with like recommendations, flashing banners,
The pop-ups.
all of the pop-ups, and, maybe even sense of pressure from like limited time offer, Do you really feel in control there?
No, you feel stressed.
Exactly. You might feel overwhelmed. You might feel like unsure if you're even seeing the best options for you,
Right.
And, research actually shows, and this is interesting, that while customers, they might initially love having a lot of options,
Sure, yeah.
their post-purchase regret, like buyer's remorse,
Yeah.
it actually goes up.
Right.
Beyond a certain point. So it's not just about like how many options you have, but the actual like mental effort of trying to weigh them all.
Yeah.
And that can actually undermine your feeling of like making a confident, autonomous choice.
Yeah.
And it's that lack of feeling in control, even when you have all these options, that's where the frustration comes in.
I feel that. So true.
Yeah.
And I know I've definitely been there. You're scrolling endlessly, pages and pages of like pretty much the same product.
Yeah.
And you kind of freeze up.
Analysis paralysis.
Exactly. And the article, they call this the paradox of choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Too many options leading to, well, stress and less satisfaction. So how do you think, like, these digital tools, the very things that are supposed to be giving us this, like, vast array of choices, how are they both helping and hindering our sense of, like, independence?
Okay, so, tools like filters, sorting options, they're designed to help you, right? Like narrow down that overwhelming selection.
Right.
You can filter by price, brand, customer ratings, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it is supposed to make things easier.
Right.
Give you more control over what you're seeing.
Right.
But how these tools are actually implemented, that's where things get tricky.
Okay.
Like if the filters are clunky or don't give you enough specific criteria, that can actually make things worse.
Yep.
add to the frustration. And then there's the algorithms, the things that decide what products you see first or what recommendations pop up.
Sneaky little things.
Right. They can really influence your choices without you even realizing it. It's like, are you being shown what you truly want or what the platform thinks you want based on what...
Your past purchases, probably?
Exactly. Or what's most profitable for them.
Interesting.
And that lack of transparency in how these tools work, that can really undermine your feeling of independence.
It's almost like you're being led down a path, but you're not quite sure who's holding the map.
Exactly.
Now, the article makes this really compelling case for why autonomy isn't just like a nice to have for customers. It's actually like good business practice.
Right.
They say that customers who feel more autonomous are more satisfied and more loyal, which on the surface makes sense. But what's the deeper psychological link there? Why does feeling in control make us stick with a business?
So if we bring back that idea of self-determination theory, right?
Okay.
When your need for autonomy is met during a purchase, it fuels this thing called intrinsic motivation.
Okay.
So you feel good about the decision because it really feels like your decision,
Yeah.
driven by you, not by some external pressure. And that positive feeling then gets linked to the whole shopping experience and the brand.
I see.
You feel a sense of ownership over the product, the decision. And that leads to greater satisfaction. And that satisfaction, it's rooted in like feeling respected and in control.
Makes sense.
And that naturally leads to loyalty, right?
Yeah.
Wanting to go back to that business that made you feel that way.
So it's not just about the transaction, it's about the feeling, like the empowerment that comes with it.
Exactly.
So let's go a little deeper into the psychology here.
Okay.
The article talks about self-determination theory. And they mention these core needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness.
Right.
And we've talked a lot about autonomy, but how do competence and relatedness fit into our shopping experiences?
Yeah.
And how do they tie back into that sense of control?
Okay, so imagine you're being pressured into buying something. Like the salesperson is just, way too pushy, or the website has all these countdown timers, how
Yeah, I hate those.
they feel manipulative, right?
That's like, back off.
Exactly. And you end up feeling resentful and not in control at all.
Yeah.
Now, contrast that with a purchase you researched thoroughly. You understood the product, you compared options, you felt confident in your final choice. That feeling of competence, like knowing you made an informed decision, that supports your autonomy.
Okay, I see.
And then there's relatedness, feeling connected to a brand because, maybe their values align with yours, or you feel a sense of community around their products.
Yeah.
That can indirectly boost your autonomy too. Because when you trust a brand, you feel like they get you. You're more likely to feel confident that their offerings, their recommendations are actually in your best interests.
They're not just trying to sell you something.
Exactly. And that supports your feeling of control over your choices.
Right. So feeling competent and connected kind of reinforces that feeling of being in charge.
Absolutely.
Now, I thought it was really interesting how the article laid out a spectrum of autonomy.
Oh, yeah.
They talk about full autonomy, guided autonomy, and then delegated decision-making. Could you give us like some real-world e-commerce examples of what each of those looks like, from your perspective as a shopper?
Totally. So full autonomy in e-commerce, imagine you're researching a really specific product.
Okay.
Like a new camera lens, something complex.
Got it.
You spend hours, reading reviews, comparing specs.
Deep dive.
Yeah, deep dive. And you make a decision based entirely on your own research.
Yeah.
That's full autonomy. Guided autonomy, that's probably the most common. So think about shopping for clothes online. You use filters to narrow down your search.
By size, color, all that.
Yeah, exactly. The website gives you tools, but you're still making the choices.
You're in control.
Exactly. Then there's delegated decision-making. This is where you hand over some of that control.
Okay.
Like a subscription box, you give them some preferences, but they choose the items.
Interesting.
In these scenarios, your trust in the company is super important.
Makes sense. You're letting them decide for you.
Right.
So beyond just the level of autonomy, the article also talks about different types of control.
Oh, yeah.
Process control, decision control, and information control.
Right.
How do you see those playing out in your own online shopping?
Okay, so process control. That's about having a say in how the whole transaction happens.
Okay.
Like choosing your shipping options.
Yeah.
Or customizing a product.
Got it.
Decision control, that's what we've been talking about, the choices you have. And then information control. That's about having access to all the details, you know?
Yeah.
Product descriptions, pricing, return policies.
Transparency.
Exactly. When you feel like you have control in all these areas, it just boosts your confidence.
And satisfaction, I bet.
Totally.
So it's not just about the buy button, it's about that whole process,
Yeah,
right?
the whole journey.
The article breaks down the customer journey into pre-purchase, purchase, and post-purchase, and looks at how autonomy fits in. What stands out to you in terms of maintaining that feeling of control during each phase?
In that pre-purchase phase, being able to control the information you get, that's key.
Yeah.
Can you find unbiased reviews, detailed product info you want to research on your own terms?
Without feeling bombarded, right?
Exactly. And then during the purchase, having different payment options, clear shipping choices, that all matters.
Makes you feel more in charge.
Yeah, but it doesn't end there. Post-purchase is huge too.
Right.
Being able to track your order, easy returns, even leaving feedback, all that contributes to your feeling of autonomy.
Okay, so a smooth post-purchase experience really matters.
Absolutely.
So since we are talking about e-commerce, the digital environment itself plays a big role.
Oh, yeah.
What about things like algorithmic recommendations, self-service support, and the whole privacy issue online? How do these things affect your sense of autonomy?
Algorithmic recommendations, those can be a double-edged sword.
How so?
They can be helpful, finding things you might actually want, saving you time.
Sure.
But if you don't understand why you're seeing those recommendations or they feel pushy, it can undermine your control.
Like you're being manipulated.
Exactly. And self-service support like FAQs or chatbots can be great, but only if they're actually helpful.
Right.
If they're not, it's just frustrating.
Makes you want to talk to a human.
Exactly. And then privacy, that's huge.
Oh, yeah.
Knowing how your data is being used, that directly impacts your feeling of control. If you feel like you're being tracked, it's a violation of your autonomy.
For sure. Now, the article offers some strategies businesses can use to, enhance that consumer autonomy.
Right.
They talk about clear communication, thoughtful choice architecture, building customer competence, and having a customer-centric culture. As a consumer, what resonates most with you?
For me, it's clear communication.
Yeah.
Treat me like an intelligent person. Be upfront. I don't want to be misled.
Makes sense.
And then how choices are presented, that matters too. Make it easy to understand. Don't overwhelm me.
Keep it simple.
Yeah. And ultimately, businesses that really prioritize those long-term relationships, those are the ones that get my loyalty.
The ones that respect your autonomy.
Exactly.
Now, the article gives examples from different industries. Retail, finance, healthcare.
Yeah.
But sticking to e-commerce,
Yeah.
can you think of any specific online businesses that have done a good job of, supporting your autonomy as a shopper?
One that comes to mind is this online retailer. They have really detailed product reviews, like unbiased reviews from real people, high-quality images, even videos.
Wow, that's helpful.
Yeah, it makes me feel confident in my decision. And another one, a clothing store, they have a super clear return policy.
Okay.
Free returns, everything. It takes away that anxiety.
That's huge.
It is. And then some platforms have these great comparison tools where you can see the differences between products side by side.
Oh, I love those.
It puts you in control. It's all about giving you the tools and information to make informed choices.
To feel empowered.
Exactly.
Now, the article touches on some future trends, like AI assistance, voice shopping, blockchain, all that.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about.
How do you think those things might shape consumer autonomy? For better or worse?
Well, they have the potential for both.
I guess that's true of any new technology.
Right. Like AI assistants could streamline things, give personalized recommendations, even handle tasks for you.
More control over your time.
Exactly. Voice shopping could be more intuitive. And blockchain, that could give you more control over your data.
Okay.
But there's the flip side. If AI starts pushing certain products or voice shopping lacks transparency, that could reduce your control.
Interesting.
And blockchain, well, it can be complex. It might create new barriers. So it really comes down to how these technologies are designed.
With the consumer in mind.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive. Really makes you think about why feeling in control is so important when you're shopping online. And it's clear that businesses that prioritize autonomy, they're not just creating happier customers, but stronger relationships.
Totally agree.
Thanks for sharing this article. It was really thought-provoking. And speaking of thinking, this deep dive was powered by Growth Suite. Growth Suite helps you to run smart discount campaigns on your store. Test it for free on your Shopify store. Just land on the Shopify App Store now and test it for free.
It's a good one.
So before we go, we've talked about all these trends and changes. It makes you wonder, how do you see your own desire for control evolving as all this new stuff keeps coming out?
That's a great question to leave everyone with. Really something to think about.
For sure. We hope this deep dive has given you a new way to look at your own online shopping behavior and what makes for a successful e-commerce experience. Join us next time for another deep dive into the world of e-commerce psychology.